Hi guys, welcome back to another discussion video. This time we'll talk about the background of the NCR and the Frontier. A lot of people seem to enjoy the little tease I gave out regarding the NCR. So for this video, I will tease just a bit more of their background. The war with the Brotherhood of Steel was long and a bloody conflict. It spanned for over many decades. The BOS was essentially superior to the NCR in almost every single way. They had better weapons, they had power armor, they had better military training, and they had access to technology in which the NCR could only dream of. In fact, they almost won the war very early on. The NCR was just able to continually fight off the BOS by constantly conscripting their citizens to fight for them. For many of these citizens, it was either you fight for the NCR or be branded a traitor and executed. A lot of these poorly trained soldiers were literally used as bullet sponges. Over time, the BOS weren't able to replenish their ammo, and due to the sheer amount of NCR soldiers, were simply able to overwhelm them. So early during the war, General Blackthorn was assigned to lead a battalion of conscripted soldiers. Blackthorn quickly earned respect of his men because he treated everyone as equals and not simply as expendable men, something the NCR kinda saw them as. Blackthorn genuinely cared for his men. In fact, he fought alongside his men even through some of the most intense battles, which included a lot of hand-to-hand combat. He was always at the forefront of a bayonet charge against entrenched BOS soldiers. Again, this in turn helped him quickly earn respect of his men. Something that really irked Blackthorn was the fact that the NCR have always ordered his battalion to lead assault first in hopes to soften up the BOS before the real army arrives behind them. Blackthorn would often voice his displeasure with the NCR brass at the poor treatment of his men. He argued that despite being just conscripts, they fought just as hard as any soldier for the NCR. Despite being poorly trained and equipped and with odds continually stacked against them, they fought hard. They fought for a cause, a republic that they didn't believe in, and a war that made absolutely no sense to them. After each battle, Blackthorn's battalion suffered the most casualties. Although his depleted ranks were quickly replenished with new conscripted men, many of his soldiers began to wonder if they were even winning the war. All of this fighting and dying, there seemed to be no end to it. Soon, low morale and soldiers began to desert and plague Blackthorn's battalion. That translated over the battlefield where the NCR performed poorly and weren't able to defeat BOS in a lot of these upcoming battles. Again, Blackthorn would beg the NCR brass to recognize his men not as bullet sponges, but as soldiers for the Republic. It was soon agreed that upon the conclusion of the BOS war, that these conscripted men would go free and return home. The promise of freedom raised morale and excitement in a lot of these conscripted soldiers. Slowly, the NCR finally pushed back the BOS to the Helios 1 station. These conscripted men have helped brought the mighty BOS to its knees. In one last bloody battle, the NCR finally won and ended the BOS war. After decades of fighting and dying, they were finally able to go home. Upon the conclusion of Operation Sunburst, for the next few months, Blackthorn and his men would help clean up and guard Helios 1. Finally, Blackthorn would be summoned to Camp McCurran to receive his men's discharge papers. As he was walking toward General Oliver's tent, air sirens began to sound off. And now normally we know that air sirens don't really go off without a good reason. And plus, you'll get to see this entire sequence in the Frontier. He started to hear shouting and see NCR soldiers running all around the compound amok. Confused, he asked a nearby soldier what in the world was going on. The soldier then replied, Fort Aradash sent a last-minute emergency transmission saying the fort had been wiped out by an invading force, and as you know it, the Legion. Blackthorn would then quickly make his way to General Oliver's tent, and instead of receiving his men's promised discharge papers, Oliver would place Blackthorn in command of Hoover Dam's defense and ordered his men to immediately reinforce his position. Deeply saddened and disgusted that instead of freedom, his men would receive death. Blackthorn knew how hard his men fought and how many of them died during the BOS war. He simply did not have the heart to go out and go through this entire struggle again. Blackthorn would beg Oliver to honor their word and release his men. Oliver refused, seeing Blackthorn's men as an integral part to the defense of the Mojave. Oliver argued that their war with the BOS left them depleted of men, equipment, and that every soldier in the army was going to count. Knowing that there was nothing Blackthorn could do, Blackthorn would leave. That very night, he informed his men of the situation, and of course there was just silence. His men were in complete shock. They were utterly speechless. After all that fighting, for many, many years, they were going to be shipped off to another war. Another war that most of them probably wouldn't survive. During the silence, Blackthorn quickly then told his men that he had no intention to send off his men to fight off the Legion. He outlined his plan to escape to the frontier where his men can lay low, rebuild, and return to the Mojave once things have settled. Blackthorn will then simply ask, "Will you follow me one last time?" His men trusted Blackthorn, and soon they started to prepare for their journey to the frontier. Back at Camp McCurran, Oliver was pretty shocked at the sudden betrayal of Blackthorn. He had no resources to chase them, especially with the imminent attack on Hoover Dam. Oliver then himself went to Hoover Dam to organize its defense and curse Blackthorn for his treachery. Blackthorn and his men would eventually make their way to the frontier. Then they discovered an abandoned airport and made it their makeshift home or their base of operations. For the next 4 years, Blackthorn's men focused mainly on themselves, rebuilding their home, upgrading their technology, and watching the Mojave and see how it all unfolded. Unfortunately for these men, fate or destiny would have a different plan in mind for them. Now, this is all for the NCR background, and I hope you guys have enjoyed it. And I want to again say, if you have any questions or comments, please post them below. And thank you for supporting me in the frontier. And once more, I'll see you guys next time. Thanks.